Would all please take your seats? We are about to begin the next panel. To start us off, I would like to introduce our first speaker for the afternoon, Ms. Pam Perry. Pam Perry is Vice President of Equitable Housing within Mission and Community Engagement in the Freddie Mac Single Family Acquisition Division. She focuses on increasing Freddie Mac's thought leadership and impact to eradicate disparities in home ownership and expand wealth for Black and Latino families while creating solutions for communities of color more broadly. She also oversees single-family strategic innovation to support the organization's mission to break through historical barriers and expand access to home ownership for all Americans, particularly in underserved Black and Latino communities. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Pamela Perry, Vice President, Equitable Housing, Single Family Division, Freddie Mac.
Good afternoon. I was looking for Armand, and I realized that this voice of God was something I was like, is he here behind the podium? Anyway, thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having me here today. This organization and this conference, near and dear to my heart, as a few people have sussed me out. I will confess that I am a long time ago NFCC employee. I worked for the NFCC about 15 years ago prior to coming to Freddie Mac. I've been at Freddie Mac for the last 12 years and had the pleasure of leading Freddie Mac's fair lending program for nearly a decade. And then for the past few years, I've really had the distinct privilege of my career to lead Freddie Mac's equitable housing efforts. And so what that means at Freddie Mac is our efforts around all things expanding access to homeownership for Black and Latino families, removing obstacles. Really, we've spent a tremendous amount of time over the course of the last few years, as is the case with many organizations, really leaning in to the ways in which the current housing finance system does not well serve the interests of Black and Latino families, and ways in which we can, remove obstacles, rework, redesign policies, programs, what have you, that are not serving this population well. Freddie Mac as an organization has been focused on advancing the interests of low and moderate income borrowers since its inception. But even still, we have a 30 percentage point gap in homeownership between white Americans and Black Americans, and almost as significant of a gap between white Americans and Latino Americans. And so I'm sure it comes as, this is not new information to any of you in the room, but we all together need to continue to link arms to address the systemic issues that are faced by communities of color. And I say Black and Latino families because when I started in this role, really the kind of the racial justice movement in this country in 2020 was at its infancy. And we were all very focused on the needs of the Black community. Once I assumed this role, pretty quickly pivoted into also addressing the needs of the Latino community, whom we know is the single largest group of first-time home buyers of the future, and who have a set of challenges that is not entirely the same as the challenges faced by the Black community, but challenges that nonetheless we would all be failing the next generation of Americans if we weren't digging deeper and trying to improve the system in ways that benefit the next generation of first-time home buyers. And by definition, we need to do something different from that which we have been doing that has not served these populations well. Oftentimes when I speak in public forums, I received questions about what about other racial or ethnic groups. And so I'm trying to be a bit more careful. And so I want to say right at the outset here that I am not, Freddie Mac is not exclusively interested in addressing equity issues for Black and Latino families, but also for other underserved populations. And for example, I spent quite a bit of time in the last week trying to design some support to benefit families displaced by the wildfires in Maui. And those families that are displaced are disproportionately Native Hawaiian families. Hawaii is a long way from Virginia. And we as an organization don't often focus on the affordable housing challenges in the state of Hawaii, in part because Hawaii is very far away. It is a very expensive place to live. And much like California today, it is affordable housing and Hawaii are almost anathema to even say in the same sentence. But obviously, the challenges faced in terms of accessing affordable housing in the state of Hawaii are forever made more challenging by the destruction of so much of the housing stock in Maui as a result of the current disaster. And so it was really a glaring example of to the extent to which Freddie Mac can offer assistance to housing-based nonprofit organizations located in Hawaii, it's appropriate for us to step in and do so to hopefully catalyze some of the recovery in a housing sense, the recovery from this kind of forever changed landscape of housing and affordable housing on the island of Maui. That's a side point, but I did want to say that really I was using that as an example to say that we are advancing the interests of communities of color generally, and whether they are of Korean, whether they are racial or ethnically Korean or Latino or Black, we're addressing the needs of individuals who have been underserved and continue to be underserved by the current system. And one of the ways in which these communities have something in common really plays nicely into the work that all of you do. And that is to say that one of the barriers that really should be within our reach to remove is the barrier to education and information. While we can't necessarily provide down payment assistance to all of the families who otherwise would be able to achieve first-time homeownership, we certainly can provide financial counseling and capability training so that families can make the best choices among the options available to them in the communities in which they work and live. And so one of the additional impediments to providing trusted education to folks who are in quote unquote underserved communities is trust. One of the things that we saw and experienced a lot through the refinance boom of late was it was just staggering when I would look at, I was watching the refinance data by race and ethnicity. And I'm sure it also comes as no surprise to any of you in this room that the refinance boom benefited primarily white families and middle income and higher income families, and communities of color at any income level really didn't refinance in any numbers that their economic situation or their mortgage position would have allowed you to believe that they would have. And again, that is a matter of education and trust in the system, or a lack thereof. And so that is something that all of us in this room really have an ability to influence. And so it is one area that I'm really pleased to work within where I can actually feel some impact in real time, as opposed to, making changes to Freddie Mac's underwriting requirements, or our automated underwriting system, or our collateral valuation tools. Those are longer lead time, more challenging issues, frankly, than providing families with education and counseling, which we have available. It has been a tool that has been available for a very long time, but has been woefully underfunded. And it really, representation matters, and that's representation in terms of not just the race and ethnicity of the folks delivering that counseling, but getting the trust of the individuals we are seeking to reach and provide greater education. Through a number of initiatives, but very importantly, the initiatives that we do with the NFCC's faith community or faith-based initiative, is one that we value very highly. Our partnership with the NFCC in working with communities. And surrounded by peers and delivered and endorsed by people they trust, folks are more open to receiving that education. And so that's really a tremendous opportunity to reach communities that have been so woefully taken advantage of. And so they come by the trust honestly. As we all know, the Black community has very often been preyed upon by the housing finance system and participants in the housing finance system. And so that distrust for the system and participants in the system is hard learned from the lessons of families and their extended families and their communities. So I really applaud the efforts of the Faith Initiative as a way to kind of rebuild trust in these communities and partner with them in advancing the financial capability of the families in those communities so that they are empowered to make good financial choices for their families and advance their own financial capability, whether it results in homeownership or not, because homeownership is not necessarily, while I work in housing finance, homeownership is not necessarily the goal for all families for a variety of reasons, but really to empower people so that they can make good financial choices and avail themselves of opportunities that are available. And I will, in the meantime, be toiling away at ways that I hope we can expand opportunity for first-time homeownership for so many families who are ready or soon to be ready to achieve first-time homeownership. So with that, I will turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Letania Gonzales, to kick off the Faith panel. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys so much. Freddie Mac relies on many partners, as Pam told you. I am not going to take a lot of time, but I do have to say thank you to Brother Herman Palmer. I need him to stand up. He is the voice of God. I have had the pleasure of working over the last 2 years to actually build a financial case, a business case for why we should actually visit churches work with churches, collaborate with churches, and get to know congregations. Because as we said yesterday, there is more business, there is more opportunity, and we need to serve all. So I am going to ask all of my panelists to come up, take a seat, and I'm going to go through a very brief bio. So I'm asking you guys to come up, but as I said, this initiative, the faith-based initiative, started with churches in Philadelphia, in particular, Mount Zion Baptist Church, Enon Tabernacle Baptist Church, and other partners such as Diversified Resource Network, Freddie Mac, Wells Fargo, TD Bank. This collaborative brings together churches that are surveyed. They host seminars, they host workshops, they are on radio shows, and these in-person convenings allow us to get the message out, to show people how to create these initiatives within your community. This is your opportunity today to learn from the playbook from each and every one of them. Those of you that were here before lunch, I want to thank you for coming back, okay? We have a great room. You heard earlier from Jen Peasy, and she gave you the bio of Connie. Connie Wright, Wells Fargo. Let me tell you something. I refer to Connie as the GOAT. When we all, kind of had our quorum before this, I said, who has been in the business long enough that knows the players, knows the execution, and knows how to bring us together? That would be Connie Wright. For those of you that were not here earlier, I will go through it. Connie is a banker, 34 years with Wells Fargo and its legacy companies. She provides strategic leadership, technical expertise for national philanthropy programming. Connie manages an expansive grant portfolio of over 40 nonprofits, to include a focus on providing housing counseling and legal assistance for low and moderate income renters and homeowners facing eviction and foreclosure. One thing that you will not see on Connie's bio is that she also mentors people within the Wells Fargo family. I had the pleasure of moving to Atlanta, and my brother-in-law at the time was an executive at Wells Fargo. She was one of his mentors. That is something we all need. Next, Reverend Stacy Mills, all the way from Greenville, South Carolina. I am so happy to see him because my daughter is now at Clemson, South Carolina. Okay, he said he'll excuse me. He is the executive director of Greenville Racial Equity and Economic Mobility Commission. Reverend Mills is a senior pastor of Mount View Baptist Church in Greenville, South Carolina, and executive director of Greenville's Racial Equity and Economic Mobility Commission. The work of these two entities intersects around issues of faith, education, and wealth creation. He has led a multi-ethnic, a multi-generational congregation for 26 of the 115 years on Greenville's southern side. And next, I have the pleasure of announcing Barbara B.J. Beeman. She has joined me on radio programs, and I must say, I didn't expect all that this, young woman packed. So I'm going to let you know, prior to joining Family Foundations in December of 2021 as a life coach, BJ was a partner, supporter, and also a client. After 7 months, she was asked to use her passion and vision to lead the financial wellness team. As the manager of the financial wellness team, she continues this family legacy by providing service, knowledge, and resources to the community and to other communities in this nation. She will never say no if someone asks her for help. But I tell you one thing, she knows when to say no. So with that, I want to go ahead and get started. And you guys know we prepare these questions, but I put them all out of order because I want genuine responses. I need this to be a conversation so that each of you can take a play out of their playbook. Now, I almost didn't come here today, because of the elephant in the room, this boot. But after being here for the last 2 days and just partnering with you, hearing about the data that you guys are collecting, hearing about how you're moving into the future, how you are really looking at the capabilities of your staff to make them better, I'm glad I made it. And this panel right here, this information is so important, I don't want you to miss it. So my first question, Connie, if you wouldn't mind. How does the NFCC's faith-based efforts align with the Wells Fargo Foundation strategic priorities?
Thank you. So I will say that there was a tight fit in terms of the priority to reach the faith-based sector with NFCC as well as Wells Fargo. If you heard me speak earlier today, you heard me tell you about a portfolio that we created in response to the pandemic, the housing crisis. There are 13 intermediaries that were part of that cohort. When we thought about this opportunity to reach the faith-based community, there were only 2 of them that we thought would be capable of doing that with authenticity, with structure, to be able to execute. And NFCC was one of them. But if we want to talk about that journey and getting there, I will say at one point, I didn't know if NFCC was capable of that. And frankly, I did say that, when they presented me with a faith-based strategy, I was like, can you really do this? Because I know that to reach that sector, you have to have relationships, and it is not established overnight. All of us, in terms of financial institutions, want to get into churches. They're target rich, if you will. But if you are committed to the work truly, and certainly for keeping people housed and the housing instability created as a result of the pandemic, we wanted to be able to truly help as many people as we could. Many of the intermediaries had to develop additional outreach strategies to reach many different types of people, all being impacted by the pandemic. But in this case, we decided to go with NFCC, partly because of the long period of time that we had worked with them, partly because of the really capable staff. I worked very closely with Jen Peasy and others, and when Herman came to me and said, we can do this, I have the relationships. And so we took that chance. My colleagues, Rulon Washington and Martin Sanchez, they are from our home lending team, more around diverse segments. And they do a number of things. Many of you should know them in the audience because they've been doing this work for a long time. We're really integral in our work for the previous housing recession. And so when they came to us and say, when I get back to that word alignment, they came back and said, Connie, we need to be able to reach our customers, our mortgage customers that are facing foreclosure. I said, let's get you connected to NFCC. And the rest is history. They were able to establish a really structured platform to be able to reach churches, to get pastors engaged. And so it has been a great, fruitful journey.
And I want to add that this is not just a sponsorship. Wells Fargo actually, 7 p.m. at night, they have Rulon Washington. He can go ahead and get embarrassed right now. He is on webinars with churches in Philadelphia answering consumer questions about foreclosure prevention. I mean, anything, he has made himself available. And so I just want you to know that this alignment, it goes past just, we're going to, write a check. That is not what this is about. So can I turn it over to the Reverend? All right. Tell me how this faith-based alliance has bolstered your empowerment efforts in South Carolina.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's really a pleasure to be here and to be able to share a little bit of our story. Hailing from South Carolina, we're first in a lot of things that aren't really popular that as far as the history of the country goes. But I think we're witnessing a shift, especially with moving post segregation. The language around community is so critically important. And I think Connie mentioned relationship, and I'll leave that for others to unpack. But as a tool in that toolbox around relationships is language and how we present ourselves. So we speak English, but the language of the boardroom isn't always the language of the pulpit or the committees of the church. So what we've found through this relationship is stripping the layers down to a base level where people are able to communicate with each other and drive the message home. The message does not change. We understand the vitality of home ownership and what the consequences are around losing it, taxes, the whole 9 yards. And I think what was mentioned earlier was during the pandemic and the ideas around saving your home from foreclosure or the ability to refinance and really improve your financial position, we know the end result was the same, but how we got there and how that language and that message was being reiterated throughout all communities was different. And so people who for the first time own a home and have the opportunity to pass that home on in a legacy to the next generation did not want to jeopardize that through a refinance that they were just not sure about. So where the church comes in is an ability to inform ambassadors within the context of the congregation and use those as bridges to the conventional ideas around lending and money management beyond mortgages. But how do you survive every day? And for me as a pastor, it really does empower me. It changes the whole trajectory of message planning to move from a historic context of what the 66 books of the Bible have said for the longest time, but help people know where they're living on Monday morning, that when we give the benediction and they're able then to face creditors without making up stories or excuses about not delivering on time and being integral and all of that. So I can talk a long time. I'm familiar with my way around a microphone, but today I want to say that language is important and being that bridge into the community where we're not judging anybody, we're just all here to help.
Thank you. Now, we've heard from the financial services and we've heard from the pulpit. Now let's hear from practitioners that are here with us in the room so you can tell them how to do it. How does a nonprofit engage? I need you to lay this playbook out so that it can be replicable, it is simple, and that I can go ahead and share it.
First of all, thank you. The key word is relationships, but being a member of a faith base where I attend a mega church, my pastor knows me, very close to the First Family. I didn't even feel like my relationship gave me the privilege to walk into the church and say, hey, I have this amazing resource I found out about in DC with Mr. Haman Palmer. So what I did, I called my community partners who knew what Family Foundations did. And I had Mr. Palmer come to Jacksonville and tell about the initiative. And it opened up a door for them to see topics, areas that a lot of people talk about generation wealth, but the urban, the people of color do not know how to get to generation color. And so with resources, with relationship and trust, the community partners trusted us. They knew that if Family Foundation said we were going to provide a service, we weren't coming in looking for quantity, but we were looking for quality. And we wanted the clients, the participants to walk away with a tangible resource. So we built partnerships with lists, Three Rivers Legal, and other legal agencies to be able not just to talk about the housing market and obtaining the house, but how do we pass the keys down correctly? So what we did was, and what we're continuing to do, and we did a community partner lunch where, again, Haman came in and he shared, but then I turned around immediately and did a pastor breakfast. And so those community partners were the ones who went and told their pastors about the pastor breakfast. And then that opened up doors for us to go into the churches. We're also looking at doing an economic mobility summit that is still faith-based led, but faith-based led does not mean we're only focusing on the faith-based organizations. We're looking at the D9s. We're looking at our current community partners and bringing them in and their clients. And the one thing we can't forget is most of the time the staff needs the resources too. So being able to give the staff the resources helped us be able to reach. And they were able to say, this is a trusted resource, and take it back to their churches and share it to their congregations and members.
You mentioned the D9.
Yes,
I need
ma'am.
you to elaborate for everybody what the Divine Nine, what does that represent?
I am not a member of the Divine Nine, but it is on most HBCU, well, all HBCU campuses and most college campuses where people of color, females do sorority, the males do fraternities, and the D9 is the first 9 Greek organizations who came together, started on Howard University mostly.
And I would say that sounds like a nice place that I attended. Thank you.
But because they are usually faith-based led and they are truly driven to make sure that the community understands the resources, they were a great touch because they're active in their churches, they're active in the community, and they're active on the college campuses locally and where they usually are alumni at. So that was why we included the D9.
Thank you so much. I want to turn it back over to Reverend Mills. Do you have any specific examples of your program and the impact that it's had in the area?
Yeah, I'd like to really kind of piggyback off of what BJ just talked about. The Economic Mobility Summit is something that we launched in Greenville this past spring, which was an incredible endeavor to bring many aspects of our community together in one place to talk about generational wealth, the creation of entrepreneurial endeavors and opportunities for people who are wanting to go into business outside of hair products and hair salons, but in addition to that, people can begin to think about this new age technology pieces that would create wealth for their families. And one of the things that I want to be sure to convey in our messaging is that the desegregation and integration, while those terms are used interchangeably, leaves out the idea of the pre-existing economic structure that was in the Black community that was destroyed, deconstructed when integration took place. So trying to build back from that space where there were in our communities schools and businesses, neighborhoods that reflected that demographic, what's remaining of those entities is the church. And so our ability to join forces with the church through both my role as the executive director of Greenville's Racial Equity and Economic Mobility Commission and senior pastor at Mountain View Baptist Church brings us outside the walls of the church into the community to begin to help that reconstruction. Nehemiah said that I can't be happy in the king's palace while the walls of my city are still torn down. So those are the aspects and the elements of what drive us to be able to construct this economic mobility uplift that we're hoping to achieve. In Greenville, South Carolina, a child born into poverty is still only 6% likely to grow out of that poverty cycle. Add race and gender. For a Black male born into poverty in Greenville, it is less than 6% chance likelihood that he will ever come out of that poverty strain. So it's our effort to focus on opportunities and ways not only to provide tools and resources, but that education be one of those North Star preeminent resources that we offer in our community.
So it definitely sounds like you're focused on the outcomes.
Absolutely.
So I want to turn this over to the financial services, because we're going to show the intersection of the pulpit, the financial services, and credit counseling. Connie, in hearing those type of, I would say, outcomes, how has this effort performed from the expectations of the Wells Fargo Foundation?
Yes, it's a great segue. We, as I said earlier, look to engage, to partner with NFCC to reach the faith-based community, and it was really to help folks avoid eviction and foreclosure. But over time, what evolved in this effort were opportunities for us to help individuals around homeownership. You know, because of the reputation and the precedent that NFC had set in engaging in houses of worship, we then were able to partner with them in a real authentic way. They recognized us as a good committed partner to this work. And so we came in relative to keeping people housed, and then it became, we want to hear from you relative to homeownership. Building generational wealth, we all have heard that term. We are all at the table to ensure that that happens. And so the home ownership piece was really the great opportunity to integrate and maximize the resources that we bring. And so in terms of outcome, the numbers of individuals that we have reached, the ways that we have been able to reach, the method of outreach, whether it is webinars, whether it is the structure of the program, it is very formatted for individuals to be able to reach or get this information, whether it is the pastors or the congregants. And so they have been very thoughtful about their outreach strategy and the best way to do it. And, you know, I will say that this initiative is one of the first that we've been successful with recently as it relates to faith-based. It's a tough nut to crack. And so you have to understand the dynamics of the church. You have to understand the personality of the pastor. Mm-hmm. You have to understand bridging the gap in terms of language that everybody understands. And so we were, you know, we didn't have much in terms of an expectation. But as time went on, we could be nothing but pleased with its outcome.
BJ, she mentioned the partnerships. Now, you mentioned the prayer breakfast. Exactly, I mean, what is that? How do you organize that? And what has it helped you do in your community?
The prayer breakfast was an opportunity. The way we did it was through our community partners.
Okay.
Most of us have dual roles. We work, but our work is our ministry too. And so if it's our ministry too, means we're connected to something faith-based. And so I asked my community partners to help me reach the multitude and go back to their churches and bring the pastors, you and your pastor. So I call my lenders, I call my realtors, I call my other nonprofit agencies over at Jacksonville Housing and Ability Housing and said, please come to this community partner meeting and then bring them to this breakfast. And as you've heard, relationships and language and trust was the way we initiated. We were able to get a sponsor for the breakfast.
Okay.
And it was at no cost to the pastors.
Okay.
Another lender, our bank was there, Ms. Valerie was there, and she said, we're going to do it and we're going to take it to the next level.
Okay.
And so just putting it out there and being transparent. And as the old saints would say, we did a testimony. We shared client stories, we shared the work of NFCCC, and we just put it out there and said, there's a problem that needs to be solved and we need your help.
I'm so glad you also mentioned realtors. The National Association of Real Estate Brokers, NAREB, one of their pillars is actually a faith pillar. So in each and every one of your cities, there is a realtist working to actually engage with churches, with nonprofits. And I think that if you have not contacted them, that would be a great place to start if you don't know where to start. And I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to go ahead and speed it up because I know that we are running out of time, but this was your hour of power, everybody. Okay? All right. Reverend Mills, have you shared any of this with other pastors? Because one key thing that BJ said was she invited pastors and then they had to bring someone. Have you shared this?
Absolutely. I have to give my Herman story as well. Herman came to Greenville, participated in our Economic Mobility Summit, and sponsored our keynote speaker for that, which was incredible. First time for our community. And then the next morning, we convened a pastor's breakfast as well. We called on pastors to come and meet with us and hear Herman's story and to talk about NFCC. But I also prevailed upon my colleagues to say that, post-pandemic, we have to shift our thinking about how we're delivering our models of worship to include helping people where they live. And I think at the core of our jobs is to give people hope, but to improve the quality of life and wrap that in dignity. And being able to talk to people about those things that they are not normally going to talk to their minister about. I mean, it's uncomfortable. In our community, people get dressed to come to church. It's their moment of redemption, not just spiritually, but really from the vestiges of life. When they've had a rough week, they can get dressed, come to church, sit with their family, enjoy a good worship service, and then take a deep breath and start all over on Monday. But I believe it's our job to give them tools to access not only financial institutions, but educational institutions, and especially where creating wealth for their families is concerned, so that the next generation can do better. We just believe that each generation should prepare the next generation to do better, be better, and have a better experience than what we've had in the current particular generation. So we're grateful, and yes, we are putting pressure on my colleagues to come to the table. I've served for 26 years at the church where I am very fortunate to serve. Only 3 pastors in the 115-year history of that church, and I'm the third and the first that wasn't related to the other 2. So I had something to prove coming out of the gate, and they took a chance on me. And what is incredible for me is I'm reminded every week that I stand on shoulders of great men and women who have gone before. They were the first in our community. And remember, I'm from Greenville, South Carolina. So the first Black employee of Piedmont Natural Gas, the first woman of color to enter and graduate from Furman University. Those are members of our church who have left their legacies, and we're building on that legacy. And our churches are the last remaining institutions in our communities that can help our people rise up from where they are now.
You mentioned meeting people where they are at. Pew Research shows us that 95% of African Americans have a relationship with a community of faith. As I'm looking around, I'm wondering, does this help shape the foundation's efforts in reaching BIPOC communities?
Yes. It very much does. And so in that case, I would say that we needed NFCC as much as they needed us in that regard. As I alluded to, it is not easy to go into a church without opposition or doubt, suspicion. And so we needed to be able to partner with an organization that did have authenticity and precedent for doing what is right for the right reasons, right? And so it was really a great opportunity, I think, for both of us. We would have been negligent if we had not pursued it. But at the end of the day, all of us being really committed to the work that we were doing. At lunch today, I sat with Herman and some of my colleagues, and he told his story passionately. And it was a story that we all related to at the table. We are all committed to the work. And fortunate, blessed to be able to be in a place with an organization, whether it is a bank or a nonprofit or a church, where we have the opportunity to make a difference, and particularly in my case and others, to be able to help those that look like me. I myself grew up in a low-wealth home, single parent, low-wealth community, all of those things that you hear about. And the church was one thing that was very important in our lives, along with a single mother that was resilient. And so we recognize, as the pastor just so eloquently spoke about, the importance of that connection with the church, and to have pastors like you, Pastor, that understand the work and connecting for that reason to lift his congregation up. It is really a relationship, a partnership that allows us to be able to help those that we know have been disproportionately impacted.
So last question. This is going to be rapid fire. BJ, what's next? What's for the future? What do you see? Quickly.
Branding.
They can hear you.
Okay, branding and changing the mindsets of people. A lot of people feel like they can't afford it. We have to make it accessible. We have to show them that through financial counseling and planning, that we may have to do it in stages, but it's all accessible to us. And that we together, through different organizations and outreaches, that we can make this a reality, and we can change the vision for our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren.
All right, Reverend, you're next.
Absolutely. So Mountain View has purchased 41 lots and has master planned 100 acres in downtown Greenville. Our next is a housing plan, and to bring others to the table to show how this can be done. Churches own property that often just sit Sundays, except Sundays and Wednesdays. So we can leverage that capital or those assets to create some solution. So that's what we're looking for. And we are annualizing our Economic Mobility Summit. So that's next for us.
Connie, if you were to leave them with one statement, what would that be?
One statement. I would just say, own your lanes, do what you do best, and align yourself with stakeholders, individuals, organizations that share your same true and authentic commitment to be able to leverage resources.
I want each and every one of you to know that we came together based upon NFCC's strategy. But as I'm, hearing about the future, there is so much more. We're talking about land development. We're talking about future partnerships. And we're definitely talking about more prayer breakfasts, okay? So if you guys want to get more information about this, please contact Herman Palmer or Pam Peterson at NFCC, because I believe that there is an opportunity for each of you to create these collaborations in your city. If you're not familiar with their email addresses, it is hpalmer, hpalmer @nfcc.org. And then the email address for Pam Peterson is peterson @nfcc.org. If you have any questions, we would love to take them quickly to keep us on schedule. I see that they're letting us know we have 4 minutes. Does anyone have a question? Please do. I would like to introduce Monda Raquel Webb from Freddie Mac. She is our Borrower Help Center Strategic Manager. I also would like to introduce Thomas Dombrowski. He is our Technical Liaison to the right. He is my guru. Give him a hand, y'all, because he has kept this conference a secret from me. But I am so happy now that I'm here. Go ahead, Monda, quickly.
Okay, yeah, definitely make it quick. So it sounds like and looks like and feels like what you all are doing up here is blueprinting. So there are several communities out there, marginalized communities, whether you're a Buddhist, a Christian, Islam, Judaism or Hinduism. I am sure that everyone wants a roof over their head and a comfortable place to lay their heads at night and to provide safety for their children. So with regard to this blueprint, what is the common denominator that is going to help lift these marginalized communities?
I'm going to let the Reverend take that and close us out.
Well, I think that's a wonderful segue to understand that we're talking about humanity here. Regardless of the brand of our faith, it's humanity. And I think there are several other tools in the toolbox, creating subsidiary entities of the church to be able to do this work. We created Parish House Community Development Corporation as a subsidiary to Mountain View Baptist Church so that the church can always remain the church and do what it's supposed to do, but also have an entity that's able to know the language, do the work in the community and not compromise on the standards of what we are doing as far as our religious perspective is concerned. So I would say create and stand up entities that are adjacent to the church that can do the work of development and help people get to greater when it comes to accessing some of the tools that our financial institutions are able to offer without compromising faith-based and state separations, those sorts of things, to be able to do the work, because it's allowed. It just takes a little bit of time, and it takes us being able to be committed to that work and figure out how to do it.
Thank you so much. Please give them a round of applause.
What do I do when my love is away?
Does it worry you to be alone?
How do I feel at the end of the day?
Are you sad because you're on your own?
I tell you, don't say no.
How will you help my friend?
Gonna get down and I'm afraid.
How will you help my friend?
I'm gonna try.
How will you help my friend?
Keep on getting down.
Do you need anybody?
I need someone to love me.
Do you need anybody?
All
All right,
I need is
everybody, please
someone.
stick around. We're going to jump right into our next session in just a moment, please.